So let's now build a create method and a read method in our controller. So in here we have already done it in our service, so that's going to create as an object. This is going to read all the objects, or which is all the books in the database. So let's build that. We have two options to use request mapping that we have used here, or we can use get mapping and post mapping. So this was an older version, but still you can use this one, which will be like give it value equals to /book/new, and then you have to give it a method type. You have to specify it here, which will be request method, and that will be .get, or it will be .post, or for update it will be .put. But we are going to use post mapping, which looks much cleaner. Import it, and this will be book/new. So in the system it will automatically be the local port number, so it will be localhost, for example 8080, then API, because we have a prefix for it, we want this to be added on all of them, and then book/new. By the way, if you want to change this one, all you gotta do is in application.property. In application.property, in here you would say server port equals to 9090. So if you do that, it's gonna change the port number if you want to change the port number. So let's get back to controller. And now we are going to create our method, and that will be public void create book. You can say book, create book, that's enough. And we need to have a parameter because we will be getting all these requests from Postman from an API here. So to have that one, we will, let's make this a clean one. So we will be getting parameters from here, so we need to have the right key and pair of values. So that will be at request param. There we go. Imported the annotation too, and this will be value will be called title, and associate this title, because now this is what's coming, but this is what we want to save the data into. So the data type is string, and it's called title. And the same thing again, add request parameter. Before I type more code, I'm gonna just open and close this bracket so I know where I am. And now I have another one, add request param, and value equals to the author name, and this is also type a string author name. And the last one would be add request, not actually the last one, but it's going to be a key of price, and it's type of double, and this is the last one at request param. So I just got an error because it's request mapping. No, I need request parameter, and the same thing, request parameter. So this one will be type, this is published date, and it's going to be type date published. You always want to make sure that if you import anything from Java util, that it's imported, otherwise you will get an error. So that's all the key values that we need, and this is what we are instantiating from our object. So we did all these things. So when we instantiate an object, it will automatically put the initialized data into the object. So now to create this one, Our controller will work with the service. So that means that we need to call this method here, which says create book. We have to call this one. But before that, we know how to create an object. So it will be book. Either we can call it new book, or we can just call it small capital book, because that's the object and this is the variable that holds the same type. It will be new book. And I want this, the constructor with everything inside, so I don't have to type it again. And that's the author name, and it's giving me an error because this name is not matching. So let's do that. And so this is the part that it belongs to controller, but now to create that we have to have a link between service and repository, which will go to book object. So I have to do the same thing inside controller. So this has connection with the book repository. To do that, I have to say, for example, we have to connect it private, which will be book service, and we'll call it book serve. And then in the constructor, we would say public book controller, and that's data type is book service, and it is book serve. We made it shorter. So this dot book serve equals, or set it to book serve. Actually, it's pretty much like setting it, not equal to. We would say this, set this book serve to this whatever value comes from here. So now we need to save that, which will be book serve. We need to call this. We need to call this service layer and say create a book. So this book is this. This is a different one. So that would mean, because in here we said create a book and we give it a variable book, and then we said save this book. If you had, for example, here new book, then it will show an error. It's pretty much like you need to give it the same name, because all it matters is the type, not the name itself. So, and just for consistency sake, we will just use the same thing. So that should be able to create as a book, but we do need to read it, and for that one we need to have a read class. So we can either create a new one where we need to fix this one because it's just returning a string, which we don't need because all it says is you have in here. I'm going to comment this out. So, and I can put the read here because it will be the first method. Let's do that. Say and get mapping. And if someone hits /book/API/books, what I want you to do is to return the list of all the books in the database. So it will be public, and since it's a list, so it has to be a list array of books, get all books. So in here we had return text, but we will return book service dot get all books. Let's rename this so you don't get confused. Let's say show all books. So this method is from controller that we just created, and this one is in the service. This one. So let's go and try, see if we can get anything. The first one would be request get the local port localhost 8080/book. So we do have an API prefix there. So you want to say go to this address, get this one, and show us all books. Okay, that's good. It worked. It's an empty array list. Now we want to post to this one, so we say create a post, and for that it needs to be, so we need to pass the same variables that we have here, and that would be, the key would be title, software development, and then we have the author will be Kim Anderson, price. This now has to match whatever you have here, so it needs to match this one. Price is 1/20/25, and the last one is published date, and it should be 2009/05. That's the month. 22 is the date. See if it works or it fails. Somehow we just automatically remove that local host /8080/API/books/new. What did I put wrong? Anyway, so I think I typed something wrong here. Let's see. So that would be up to this part. I had put something wrong there, misspelling. So that's the part there. Now we want to get read all of this. So we already have a get method, and we say show us all the books. There we go. We have submitted to, so that's the data and that's the date. That's done for the reading part. Let's now do the updating, and before we do the update we have to do one method at the service layer that will be getting by ID. So let's come to service layer and build how to get a book by ID. We need this one so we can use it multiple times in other methods. So it will be public, give me a type of book, find a book by ID, and it will be type long ID. I'm going to pass you a type ID and find that from me. To get a book by ID we have to, or we can use optional, not we have to, optional book by ID equals to, now we have to call the repository because we have a method there. We say find by ID, whatever ID is there, and then we will say if book by ID, which is this variable, if this one is present, if we have something that has value in it, because it's an object now, we say return book ID dot get because we want to get it out of the list, and if it is not there, return null. So just to show you, this is book repository, which is this one, find by ID. We are calling that to get a book by ID. So let's comment this out, get a book by ID. And now we're gonna come and do a controller for that. If you just want to get a book by ID, in here we will be using the path variable. So this will be at get method because you're going to read, and we will say if someone comes to /books/ID, we put it inside the bracket because it's going to carry a value. So we would say public return a type book, get a book, show ebook by ID. That's the method name. And we would say a path variable, this one, and it will associate ID, the key, and the type will be long ID. But in here, remember, we are returning a book, so we are passing a value, so we want to return a book. So we are going to pass a book object. We'll say book, type of book. So we are adding that one because we want to return a book in here. So we want to find our object, and that will be first find the book for me, book by ID equals book service dot find by ID. Okay, we are passing that ID there. Once you find that one, what you need to do, just return me that book by ID. So we will need this one later too for the when we create, because we want to pass and get an object and get that object back, and that will be at the updating phase. So we say return book by ID. It is the same as saying, for example, in SQL, select books, all books where ID equals 1. But once it returns it, you will have name, like you will have title, you will have author name, all these things will return with it, and price and date. So it will return all these data with it. It's the same thing. We want to get it by ID. And let's see if this works. So that's the method in the service. Let's go. I hope it has restarted. Usually does this. And say give me book ID number 2. There we go. And give me book with the ID number 1. So it returns an object. We pass an ID, but it returns an object. If you just even if you don't add this part, still it should work. Let me restart it to make sure it does, because we are only getting the book, but the reason we are adding is because we want to later in the update method we need to have an object to update. If we don't add that one, sometime it fails. Yeah, still it works. We are getting it, but we need to update, which is a different method. So for that one we do want to add that book there. So let's add the updating method. It will be update method, which will be put. So first let's create this one in here first. So it would be public. I don't want to return anything, so I would say, see, like when you have the return type book, it returns this value, shows it back. But when you have a write method, it just takes it and writes it there. It doesn't return you anything. So we say update book, and that will be type of book, which is type of an object. And we say call the book repository book repo, because it has that save method that we saw on the website. And we will call this save entity. What entity? We are getting an object called book, so save that one. So this is going to be updating. It's similar to save, but it's different in the controller. So in the controller we will say put mapping. So here's the difference here. First it is put mapping, then we say slash books slash update / and then ID. You can move this back and forth, like sometimes you would see people like having, for example, books and then ID. It will be like ID and then update. either way, whatever you like, do what you like the most. So public, and we will say void and say update ebook. And what kind of book? First we need to get a variable. When you see this part, automatically should ping into your mind that you need a path variable, and that is an ID type in long ID. So we are gonna say type is book, update an object that will be a type book. And now you're going to use the service layer. That's why we need to use service layer, because we will write a code and we will use it multiple times. So now you're going to use book find by ID again, book by ID. I give it similar name. It doesn't have to be, because this one is one method in a different block and this is a different block, so they have nothing to do with each other here. So we will say book service dot find by ID. There we go. And the reason you see ID here, because in here we have given it similar name, so we say ID. So that's why it, when it automatically fills it, it just fills it with the same variable that it has in the other layer. So that's why. Otherwise it would be something else. So whatever you call the last variable, that's what it will show up. So the only thing you want to do here is you want to check if book ID, if this one, this thing that's coming from there, this one, book by ID, is not null. If it has value, because we don't want to save it something doesn't exist. So if it is not null, then call book service and do what? Update the book. That's it. That's all it needs. You can give it an else, return null, but that's all we need. We don't want to use too much else, because it sometimes creates bad luck on the code. So we have the update method, we have the update controller. So when you run this here, usually it keeps auto restarting, but I will run, let's say that I want to update book number 1 because the names were not meaningful. So I would say update. Where am I getting that address? That's the address I have given it here. So I will type that book update ID number 1, and in here the parameters, I need to pass the parameters. Title, I want the title to be coder of the year, and I want the author name, the Terminator T800, and I want the price, or the price is 25,000. And since it's a Terminator, so it's in future, so I'm gonna give it a future date published just for fun, not real. So that will be 2030, because the Terminator has landed earlier here, and the month is 2nd, and the day is 25th. So we are gonna send this one. I got an error. It says method not allowed, because it's we have to switch it to pet. It's a get method. So now send it again. It posted there. Let's have a get method open here. So it will be localhost books. Of course there is an API with it. So now it has changed to this data. So look at these two ones. We created this one and we give it the data type, and we say this is how we want our date to look at it. When it was created, computer automatically instantiated its own type of object. But we said in update that when you update something, just go, it's almost the same style. So it follows the same pattern because it uses the dash anyway. But you can change it, because in this one I did change it. I said, like, instead of using the dash, use the backslash, because that's common. And in here, updated at is null, but in here we do have an updated date. So that's what the job of these two methods are in the database. It triggers when you call the updated created at here, because these are the two variables we have connected and set it what it needs to do. So that almost done. And now, since what we are doing, we are reading all of them, we are creating all of them, and we are getting it by ID. Now we are updating it by ID. It's time to delete what we have created. Huh? Isn't that disappointing? Let's destroy or delete, and that would definitely be at delete mapping, and this will be like go to books / delete, and then take the ID, delete this one, and we would say public void. It can do return with it, but actually I'm typing this in a wrong place. This code is for the controller. For here you just need to have public void delete book, and that will be, let's say, delete a book, because we don't want to delete all of them, so you want to get it by ID, and that will be book repo, because we're in service, delete book by ID. So you remember that I have not written this code. It is the repository, the interface, the class that has already implemented all these methods. I'm just gonna call this and just pass the ID. No, not delete all, delete by ID. It would be miserable to delete all. Delete by, let me put my mouse aside. So you want to say like delete this by ID. It picks ID again. I'm just gonna refer it one more time. So because we choose the type to be ID, long ID, and that's what it expects, and automatically it autofills it with it. But if you have a different variable, you definitely want to put that one. So in controller, I would say delete at delete mapping. There we go. Books delete ID, and now we will say public void delete book by ID, and since we said ID, so we need a path variable, and that will be ID, and type is long ID. You can use integers and other data types, but this one is easier. So now that we want to get it by ID and delete it, so that's all we gotta do, and say call book serve dot delete by ID, delete a book from service, and let's see if it works. So I hope it has restarted. Remember, if you change any code in these in controller in Java, you have to restart the Spring Boot. So the good thing about running it in debug mode or div tools, it automatically keeps restarting. But if it doesn't work, then we can go back, check it if it's working or not. So I'm going to get method here. Now let's open another one, say it is a delete method, and let's copy this to make sure that we don't run into another surprise problem of misspelling. Delete, and ID will be, let's delete number 2. You see it did run, reacted. So let's now check if we have one more or not. So that's it. It's a full CRAN application right now. So we have all the components for doing a full CRAN application, and it's an API. And the next section of this video, we will be converting this to a front with a model view. So we have a web page. So the good thing is now we have the book model already set up, and we have the repository and the book service. So it has the creating method, reading method, and getting by ID, updating, and deleting. So all the RESTful commands, API requests. So in controller, we have the same thing. You can get all the lists, and then we have all the create parameter, and we have the update and delete methods. So it includes all of these. And to just one more time, you want to probably get used to a little bit to Postman, how to work with API. If you do know how to use Angular, all you gotta do is just connect these routes in your routes page in your application. So it's gonna, this path will connect to that one, and it will render it on the front end framework. So that's the Git. That's all we have. We can now post another one. Yeah, this one, what it is, crazy. Let's see now. You should have two of them. So once you delete something from the database, the ID deletes with it. So this one will be the one which is after it. So because we choose identity in object, so it will continue the sequence. So the put mapping, so we can update in here. And what do you want to update is book number 1, but I'm going to update number 3. So that's the address. It has put everything there because we already sent it once, but it's going to stay here. We can change the data, but it's fine. Let's go and check it again. So now that's fixed and this updated. And the last one is delete. Any one of them you don't like, you would always delete by putting the right number. And there we go. We have all the CRAD-full API for this application. So see you on the next video, where we will be converting this to a view model, and we will use JSP to have a front end for this CRAD application. Thanks for your time.